exciting. Good. Well, I've just got my t-shirt out, my swag, my
Yeah.
brand.
Swaggy, mate. Looking super
Um,
swaggy.
but do I need to like do some push-ups or we're
Yeah,
ready to
if
go?
you can, yeah. One hand push-ups would be good. Are we all set? All right. In that case, well, welcome to Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, a podcast telling stories of founders, investors, and operators working to turn the world we live in into a better place. Today we have Omer Molad from Vervo on the call. Omer, thanks for jumping on and joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Look, super interested in what you do and hearing the story of Vervo and the future of talent acquisition and so forth. Before we do that, though, I'm going to throw it over to my co-host Wallo, who's going to welcome us in with a song. Over to you, Wallo.
Yeah. Sorry, have you been serenaded before, Omer?
My wife serenades me once a week.
You're a lucky
Actually,
man. You're a lucky man. So here are some lyrics, and I kind of switched up the style a bit for today's podcast. So here we go, Matthias. I bring my best to the table. You can relax cause I'm able. So let's connect like a cable. Don't need no judgment or label. I bring my best to the table. You can relax cause I'm able. So let's connect like a cable. Don't need no judgment or label. Ele mama, ele mama, ele mama, ele mama, ele mama. Ele mama, ele mama, ele mama, ele table. You can relax cause I'm able. So let's connect like a cable. Don't need no judgment or label. I bring my best to the table. You can relax cause I'm able. So let's connect like a cable. Don't need no judgment or label. 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 Yeah, that's it from my end, man.
let's connect like a cable. That's
Yeah, I had
going to for a while.
I had to put that in there. It was such a dad joke. I
love it.
I like the lyrics there at the end too. Afrobeat chanting.
Yeah, you know it. You know it.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice. Hey, good work, Wallo.
Yeah.
Like I said, welcome to the show. Before we dive into anything, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who you are, where you from, background, upbringing, wherever you want to start, wherever you want to end. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live in Melbourne. I'm married. I have two young children, a 5-year-old boy and a crazy 1-year-old girl and a dog. And we live in a part of the city that feels like the country. So we live in the florist. We moved here about 18 months ago from the inner city. So, and that's kind
Whereabouts are you? Whereabouts exactly?
We live in for people outside of Melbourne, in a place called Eltham South. And
oh yeah, great spot.
It's very bush and it's kind of a big part of our lifestyle now. And I enjoy being out in nature. And I've probably spent more than half my life in Australia and the other half in Israel. I was born in Tel Aviv and spent a large chunk of my childhood there and served in the military, which was a defining time period, roughly 3.5 years in the military, and moved to Melbourne, went to law school, which is where I met my wife, and spent most of my adult life here in Melbourne. And the last few years co-founded this business, Vervo, with my friend David. We've been friends for a long period of time, and living the dream, doing what I feel like I was born to do. Nothing else I'd rather do. So
Awesome.
very happy, very challenging, but no regrets.
Awesome. Sounds good. Hey, so you mentioned that you grew up in Israel. I know that you spent some time obviously in the military. What was that like? I mean, it's different to the way you would come up in Australia. Obviously, we don't have compulsory military service. Did you enjoy it? What did you learn from it? Is it something you look back on fondly?
I certainly didn't enjoy it. I think it was, it was challenging, homesick. It was exhausting. Lack of freedom. So it's a very punishing, taxing period of time, mentally and physically. Right. But especially when I was in a combat unit, and then I was an officer, so I was in a leadership position. It's an unrelenting responsibility for people's lives and for achieving missions, completing missions. But you get pushed to the limit in a lot of ways, and it does give you great perspective on life. And when we talk about challenging scenarios in the workplace, this isn't to be dismissive of, it's not to say that we don't face challenging scenarios in the workplace, but I've got a broader sort of perspective to fall on and think about, well, okay, how challenging is this?
Yeah.
I can look back and say, well, I've been in other situations where the stress level was very different and the fatigue was greater. And so I can draw on sort of a more diverse range of experiences. Also, from a leadership perspective, to have that experience of being a leader at a young age in a setting where people are under duress and they're not getting paid to do it. And that taught me a lot as well. So I think that experience to some extent shaped me, and I learned a lot from that, and very influential in how I think about things.
For sure. That's super interesting. Your resilience must be through the roof in comparison to people that haven't been through. I guess your stress. Everything's relative, right? So the stress that you would take on in a startup environment relative to that would be quite different. That's interesting. Would you say it was a good thing, bad thing, if you say, for example, you were still in Israel and you were raising your two young kids? Would you want them going through military service? Or
I mean, I'd like to live in a world where it's not necessary, but I live on this planet. And in this world, unfortunately, it is necessary. We can debate that, but that's a reality. And so, I think from the ages of 18 to 22, there are probably other experiences that now maybe you won't come out as resilient, and maybe it'll take you longer. But I think net, it would be nice if things were easier and you could do them at your own pace. But I kind of didn't ask those questions. I just accepted that this is the reality. This is what happens. And so how do I make the most out of it? And that's what I tried to do. I just tried to do my best, and come out of it with something. And so I look at it like that. It's kind of like, it's not something I can erase from my history. It's just part of my lived experience and who I am today. And I think I'm better for it, although at the time I wished many times that, I didn't have to be there.
I bet. Omer, I was saying before you jumped on the call and was doing some sound checks and so forth with the team. I traveled in Latin America for 7 months when I was 24, 25. And it was funny because I met around, I don't know how many people I met. I met 10,000 people. I met a lot of fellow travelers, and 50% of them, I reckon, were Australian, 30% of them were Israeli, and 20% of them were the rest of the world. So did you follow suit? Did you do did you put a backpack on your back, or did you come over here to Australia, or what? Did you do the typical thing and get out?
So I'm much more of a snob. So I went to Europe for a month.
Oh, fancy pants. Flashbacking, Omer.
I went to Europe for a month instead of Latin America for 6 months. And I did that on the way to moving to Melbourne. So I spent a month in Europe. And then I came to Melbourne, and I was kind of less in need of the sort of 6 months in India or Latin America and the drugs and that whole scene. And I was more in need of changing scenery permanently and moving. And so that's what I did. I was kind of made a plan to move to Melbourne. I spent part of my childhood in Australia. I was fortunate to have an Australian passport. And on the way, I spent a month in Europe.
What do you think it is about? So it's funny because obviously, like I mentioned, anecdotally, I genuinely felt like 80% of the people I met were Aussies and Israelis, but we have 25 million people, and Israel 6 or 7 or whatever it is. There's obviously, when you finish military service, you're probably going to want to go out and see the world and so forth. But is there anything else that you think gives Israelis that wanderlusty mindset? I guess it's incredible how many Israelis travel, especially Latin America. I was saying earlier, Latin America, when I was traveling, you had the choice to choose to stay in hostels or Israeli hostels. And anyone can stay in an Israeli hostel, but I was kind of like, what is going on here? Why are these my two options?
The military is part of it, but I think the whole, the way society is structured, it's a very small place. It's hot. It's very intense. It's surrounded by Arab nations. They're not all, some more friendly than others to Israel for a host of reasons. And it's like this pressure cooker. It's hot. It's crazy on the roads. It's intense. There's nowhere to move. It's small and packed, and it's full of people who are curious and they sort of like there's Israelis have affinity with the US and other sort of Western liberal democracies, but geographically, it's in the Middle East. It's kind of fish out of water culturally, the way, and so you grow up watching Hollywood and American TV. You're a stone's throw from Europe, but you're surrounded by desert, and so I think there's this natural kind of hunger to get out and to see what's going on in all these places that you hear about and see on TV, and they're close. They're really close, and you can't go to the neighboring countries. Really, I mean, you can go to Jordan, and a lot of people go, and Egypt, but you can't drive north into Lebanon. You there'd be landmines in between, and Syria, and it's such a shame that you can't do that. And so it's not like, well, here we go to New Zealand, and in Europe you drive through from Germany to France and whatever. You can't do that really in Israel. So you go further, you look further, and that's sort of what I grew up knowing. Yeah,
that's interesting. So I've got a little theory here. I've just come up with. So Israel punch above their weight massively when it comes to Nobel Prize winners and successful startup founders. Would you agree?
I mean, I think factually that's true. Yeah, mathematically.
You do think?
I think that's factually true. I think there are disproportionately to the amount of the population. There are. I think the second not for non-US companies listed on NASDAQ. I think Canada's number 1 and Israel's number 2. And for a country that's tiny, that's extraordinary. And I don't know the stats on Nobel Peace Prizes, but definitely not going to be peace on Nobel Prizes.
Yeah.
Nobel Peace Prizes don't do so well. I think on Nobel Prizes, I don't know the stats, but I wouldn't be surprised if what you're saying is true.
I've heard. I don't know the stats either. But do you think because it begs the question why that would be. But do you think that as young people coming up in Israel, and obviously once you finish school, you do 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, 3.5 years of military service, and then potentially it seems like to me it's a rite of passage to go and travel for 6 months or whatever that is, and travel, especially at a young age, and especially to where I've met a lot of Israelis in the past, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and so forth. You see how the other side of the world works, really. And I would argue that going through military service and then spending a good amount of time traveling, you would probably have a pretty well-rounded view of the world. Do you think that's maybe part of the reason why?
I think I think that's part of it. I think it runs deeper, though. I think the society values education. So let's start with that. So when society values education, then people are told from a young age, take school seriously, do math, study, and we sort of value. Like, so when I think about Australia, we have state funerals for athletes. So the message we're sending to people here is, if you're a cricketer or a footballer, you're at the pinnacle of society, which is kind of crazy. But in Israel, what you hear about is scientists and innovators and entrepreneurs and people like that. So they're the people who are put on pedestals, not so much. Now, I think Israel, they'd want to be better at sport as well, but notwithstanding that, society values science, innovation, education, entrepreneurship. And so when that happens, the investment goes into those areas. They're the people that you look up to. They're the people you aspire to. So then you grow up saying, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be the founder of Intel, or I want to be whatever, as opposed to like, I want to be on Big Brother. I want to be on Big Brother, or I want to be Chris, or I want to be Chris Judd, or I want to be whoever, right? And listen, I love football, so it's got nothing to do with it. But I'm answering the question. That's why I think so. That's a big part of it. I think the military then compounds that. So, in the military, there are computer and unit. There are entire departments that invest in technology and train people in engineering and software engineering and these kind of things. So there's a lot of people who get their education there. So it's kind of there are many layers to this. And innovation breeds innovation. So because there's a lot of STEM talent, big tech companies go and open offices in Israel to recruit engineers. And so then when you're a kid, you see the logos, they're the ads you see on the freeway. And so, and it just continues and continues to sort of this cycle. And that's how the sort of startup nation developed. So I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a lot of things working together to generate that effect.
Yeah, it's super interesting, isn't it? All right, cool. So leading into what you're doing now, where did Vervo come from? Tell us a little bit about it. How did you get it off the ground? When did the idea spring in your mind?
Are you a tennis fan?
Yeah, I don't mind a bit of tennis.
Do you like Roger Federer?
I love Roger Federer. Yeah. He's my boy.
Yeah, so let's talk about Federer for a second. So Federer, do you know what grades he got in high school?
No.
Me neither. And if you had a coffee with him, you'd probably discover that he's nice. And if you got him to do a personality assessment, you might learn, I'm guessing, that he's introverted. But only when you see him on the court do you gain an appreciation for how good he is as a player, how well he can play. And even if you came back at me and said, yeah, but he's got all these Grand Slams, that tells you he's good, I'd say, yeah, but a lot of people have won Grand Slams, but Federer has this other thing, this like elegance or grace that you have to see. That's really what our company's about, and what one of the things that inspired us. We think that everyone has some element of Federer in them. And too often that's ignored. And instead, what gets used as a signal to make decisions on people's careers is like, what grades they get in school and how long do they work at a certain company and a lot of things like that, instead of, well, show me if you can play. And so David and I have been friends for a lot of years, 20 years plus actually. And I worked in banking and finance for a lot of years, and David worked in tech, and and he also ran a wholesale bakery. And we and as we discussed, I've served in the military and I worked at Red Cross. So we've had like a diverse range of experiences. And the common theme that we saw in all these different industries is this disconnect between people trying to get jobs and fulfill their potential and how companies make decisions on people. And companies gravitate towards the pedigree. How good's your resume? How where'd you study? Where'd you work? How similar to me are you? Which has very little to do with how someone can contribute. And coming back to the Federer example, you have to give people an opportunity to showcase their talent in the setting that matters, that's relevant. If you want to know if someone's good at welding metal, watch them weld metal. Don't ask them to fill a survey. Right? Don't worry about what grades they get. Don't worry about if they're an introvert or if they're a man or a woman. Who cares? Watch them weld metal. And so we sat down and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could find a way, just like in hospitality where, you know, in a restaurant, you say, come in and do a shift in the kitchen, where we could use technology to create that experience for every job at scale in parallel. Just like in the movie business, another industry that's inspired us, they say, come and audition for the part. I don't care if you've done these 10 other parts. You might have been great at these 10 other parts, but you're not going to be great for this one. Or maybe you've never made a movie, but hey, you're a phenomenal talent that hasn't been discovered yet. So let's give you a chance to audition. So we took this concept of job trial and we brought it online, and we said, if you could recreate this online and do it at scale, we're removing all this noise from the hiring process.
So that sounds amazing. You used a couple of examples there, the welder, the actor. So what are examples of putting people at work into practice? Say, can you give me some examples, maybe like a marketing example, sales example? Like what does a typical business startup, whatever, come to you for, and how would you actually vet for the right talent?
Yeah, so in sales, imagine doing a mock cold call or writing a prospecting email. Imagine dealing with objections, having to handle objections. In a customer service role, you might have to deal with a difficult customer. You might have to complete a bunch of tasks that are related to, you might have tickets, support tickets that you have to resolve, and you might have to think about, you know, do I offer a discount? When do I escalate? How do I handle, you know, all these kind of situations? In a financial role, you might have to do something in Excel. You might have to reconcile a ledger or calculate the cost, the valuation of something, or you might have to, you know, run payroll and do something like that. And in a marketing role, you might have to work out a strategy to, you know, to get visitors to a website. In a product role, you might have to redesign an onboarding flow or a user experience. And so we try and get as close as possible to what they're actually going to do. Now, there are clearly some scenarios where, or some role types where it makes less sense, like performing cardiothoracic surgery. But in the vast majority of jobs, and certainly in information jobs or knowledge worker type roles, that you can simulate a large amount of the role in a very short space of time, and you can do it in a way that's asynchronous, so that the recruiter or the hiring manager doesn't have to be present while those tasks are being completed, and that those responses could then be analyzed. And so that's how we think about it. We always start from, well, what does success look like in the role? What are the important tasks that would need to be completed? Maybe it's writing code. Okay, you know, what are the important tasks? Maybe it's presenting to a board. Maybe it's doing a budget. Maybe it's preparing a sales deck. What are those tasks that matter for that role, and how should they be completed in a way that's going to make that person successful in the role? And then let's use that then informs how the assessment is designed, and we try and get, that's what we're always searching for. How do we get as close as possible to a day in the life, to the role itself?
That's interesting. So using other examples around talent acquisition and job application and so forth. So let's use LinkedIn. LinkedIn, correct me if I'm wrong, the way you say it, optimizes for speed and less friction in terms of when people are applying for jobs. So there's the easy apply button, which will effectively pre-populate all of your details in seconds, and you can apply to, I guess, hundreds of roles a day if you wanted to. How do you, like, how long does a typical assessment take? What stage of the funnel is it in? And how do you get buy-in from job seekers, you know, to make it look and feel like Vervo is something that is going to help them get a job rather than something that's cumbersome in order for them to actually apply? How do you think about that?
You said it in the question. It's the most important thing is positioning this as an opportunity for someone to succeed. And it's not an additional impost. It's instead of driving to an interview or filling out a form or doing 10 phone screens and all these other things that aren't actually additive usually to the job seeker. They're quite wasteful. And they're not additive to the company. And so it's taking the first two things we typically replace are resumes and phone screens, and then we replace about 2/3 of interviews. And so instead, in 20 to 60 minutes, and it really depends on the role, and I can come back to that, of time, you're, as a candidate, you're putting your best foot forward, you're showcasing what you actually can do in the context of the job itself and that company, which is really important, instead of being eliminated based on your demographics or your work experience or your grades or some other signal that is not predictive of performance. So you get an opportunity to put your best foot forward. You're doing it in a fraction of the time you would normally spend commuting to interviews and doing 5 interviews and phone screens and all these other things. And from the company's perspective, they're only going to have to interview a small fraction of people, and when they do, they already know they can do the job. Their skills are being verified in the context of the role. Now, where it sits in the funnel is usually close to the top. Typically for really sort of ultra high volume roles in retail, hospitality, warehouse, it would be 7 to 10 minutes. For the sort of knowledge worker, high skill type roles, it might be 60 minutes for an enterprise sales role or an engineer. And it might sit in the middle of the funnel. So if they're harder to fill roles, you might want to spend more time at the top on candidate engagement and attraction, particularly in this market. But you shouldn't lower your standards in terms of rigor. And I don't think it's a good signal to a candidate to say, well, we're just going to hire anyone with a heartbeat. You want to hire people who have proven their skills and can do the job. And so where it sits in the funnel and how long the assessment is really depends on the brand of that company, the complexity of the role, market conditions, etc. But typically it's in the top half of the hiring funnel.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Sorry, you go.
No, you go. I'm mate. I talk all the time. Don't worry about me.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I was waiting for the right opportunity to ask. You talked about how companies try to, talk the nuances of each company, because my big question has always been, like, since I read about Vervo, is like, how do people accept these? Like, as a business owner, how do I know that? Because some people's questions would be like the nuances of their business, for example, culture, and maybe they feel like a role is more specific, like is more detailed than Vervo can what's, I don't know, can test for. So like, how do you, deal with those kind of situations where you're trying to tell them that, like, look, we need to, what's more important is that the person can do the job. Another limitation is like referrals and, personal relationships, which is the reason why Vervo exists in the first place. Trying to stop, like, make more qualified people take the role and everything. So how do you keep those two things, culture and then, human affinity for referrals and people that are familiar, how does Vervo stand in between two of them?
Yeah, so the first thing is companies need to commit to having a consistent process.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. Our mission is to make hiring about merit, not background. And that's what we say to every client, and then they need to commit to that. So they need to commit to having a process that's based on merit, not background. There's no favors. Everyone does the assessment. Everyone is judged under the same conditions. Everyone's and judge is a harsh word, evaluated. Everyone's given the same opportunity, okay?
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. Now, if you've come from a referral, wonderful. If you're, a superstar, wonderful. Well, then the assessment should be easy. It should be great. You should stand out. If you've got a big reputation, but you don't do well in the assessment, something's
wrong.
Something's up, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is, to hire a human being, humans are complex characters. We're not robots. There is no perfect hire. There is no perfect employee, okay? There are just different levels of performance, different levels of fit at different times in different contexts. So when we talk about, let's talk about engineering. Knowing someone can write code, that's good. That's not enough. What if they don't follow the instructions in a Jira ticket? What if they don't listen to feedback? What if they're arrogant? What if they're not a good team player? So many factors go into. So there will be parts of an assessment that are really job specific. So performing functions like designing or selling. And then there will be parts of an assessment that are more general work skills applicable to many jobs, like attention to detail or openness to feedback. And they need to be contextualized. So our assessments are all custom. Now they will take in so we've got hundreds of thousands of existing questions, but you can piece them together in any way you want to make the assessment really yours. And you can completely edit or create from scratch. You can essentially you'll end up with something that's tailored to your company and your situation. And so I'll give a real example. Like let's take a designer role. Okay, so a designer at a startup is a different job to a role with the same job title at a huge accounting firm.
True.
At the accounting firm, they're going to want you to present to committees and do things in a certain way. And at a startup, be like, why haven't you shipped this already? And so. Yes, it's the same title, and yes, you need to design, but the way that you perform your job is going to be different. And so the assessment needs to bring that to life, showcase that, give candidates an opportunity to show that. And so that hopefully that answers what.
It did wonderfully. Thank you.
It's not his first rodeo. It's not his first. It was a good, solid answer. I thought, he's got him here. He's got him. Nah, kidding. So Omer, so you've obviously got some great traction with Vervo and some amazing logos and so forth on your side of key customers, clients, and so forth. How has COVID affected Vervo? Has it been a shot in the arm? Has it been a difficult period? And how has it changed the way that people look at talent acquisition in your eyes?
So there's a combination of forces in the market. So when the pandemic started, the first thing that happened was uncertainty and panic. And so a lot of companies stopped hiring. A lot of companies reduced the size of their workforce, let people go, and a lot of companies froze budgets for new investment in tools like ours. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is there was genuine uncertainty, not just from a business perspective, but people were worried about their health. People were in lockdown. People were doing homeschooling and remote learning, and so they were sort of scared and distracted and uncomfortable, which makes it harder to transact, to do business. So that's one component of it. And then another sort of part of it is everyone went online. Everyone had to all of a sudden go on the internet to do all their hiring, to do everything, because you couldn't do that physically. And so all of a sudden, companies were forced to do things differently. A lot of industries, including industries that we support, healthcare, aged care, logistics, groceries, were all of a sudden essential industries where you buy your food, getting medical health. And so those industries were hiring like crazy and needed technology. And so really it was kind of chaos. We saw in from the beginning to the end of, for most of last year, it was just, some of our customers were just going crazy. And other customers were basically going out of business. Really struggling.
It was exactly like that, wasn't it?
And so that's what it felt like at the time. And then it sort of started to settle down a bit, and there was this false dawn at the end of last year that we're getting to the end of 2020 and everything will be fine. And then Delta came, and then 2020. It turns out that 2021 was still 2020. So 2020 lasted for about 18 months.
2020 was the warm up for 2021.
Right. Normally a year goes for 12 months, but 2020 seemed to go for 18 months. And so it's had a really interesting effect. I think long term, it'll be positive in the sense that everyone's realized now that you can hire people on the internet. You can work remotely. You can work with people who don't live in the same city. You can raise money from people who you've never met. You can do all these things, but it'll take time for the world to catch up. I think people still haven't found their feet. And so from our perspective, what we've seen is people have taken the first step to realize, okay, I can do things digitally now, which is wonderful. The next step is to realize I don't want to just replace what I was doing before with some online version of that. I want to get rid of these traditional methods completely because they just don't predict performance and they're biased. Actually move to skills-based hiring and merit-based hiring. And that's a bigger leap. That's a change in behavior. It's a change in mindset. And so that's what we'll be preaching till the end of days.
So obviously with the new way of work, the pandemic, global teams, so on and so forth, there's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation. There's a lot of talk about the undersupply of technical talent, startup talent worldwide. So considering, like you said, you want people to be hiring on talent, hiring on merit. How does Vervo, how can that play in? How can that help, I guess, bolster the opportunities around the world for talent in this market that is apparently short of talent? How can Vervo work to, I guess, counteract this trend of too many jobs, not enough all-stars, you know?
Well, what a great opportunity to open up the funnel to people from parts of the workforce that we didn't traditionally consider, right? And so the same companies that have been talking about diversity and inclusion, I'd love to see them now say, well, let's open up the funnel to people from historically ignored backgrounds, from underestimated backgrounds, from people that don't have 5 and 10 years experience in the exact thing that I'm recruiting for people that don't live in the city that I'm used to recruiting from, and so on. I can go on and on. And so what an opportunity when candidates are seemingly in short supply to open up the funnel, to give every applicant a chance to showcase their talent, to encourage people from all backgrounds to apply and judge them based on their performance, not on their pedigree. And that's what we do, and that's our mission. That's literally what we're about. And I don't think that a candidate short market is an invitation to compromise on standards, because I think anyone who's a student of history knows that that's going to come back to bite you. You know, you definitely want to pay market and you want to be aggressive, but you know, there are companies doing absolutely insane things at the moment. And what will happen, and it will happen because we've been around long enough to see this, is when the next recession comes, and it will come, they will fire those people. That's what they do. They will fire all those people that they've thrown crazy sign-on bonuses at. And so in the short term, it's okay. But companies that care about long-term employee retention need to think a little bit bigger than what's happening in the next 5 minutes. And do I want to bring people in who are going to leave in 6 months for a better offer, or do I want to bring people in who care about the job and the company, want to say absolutely pay them great. I'm not saying not to pay, but there are companies right now who are basically hiring anyone with a heartbeat. Yeah. But that's what they're doing. I mean, since when has that served anyone well? And so what we're saying, what we're talking to our clients about is, don't lower your standards, but position yourself in a way that you're competitive. Open up your funnel. Okay. And this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, where this is not additional friction. This is not additional hoops. This is replacing the things that were the hoops. Nobody wants to do 7 interviews with your company. Nobody wants to do that. Right. Yeah. And we've got work to do as well. I'm not just putting this on companies, but it's about positioning this as, this is an opportunity for you as a candidate to not be disqualified based on your background, but it's an opportunity for you to shine, to put your best foot forward. And it's an opportunity for companies to open up their funnel to people that they wouldn't have considered previously, which seems to me like the most logical thing to do in a market where candidates are in short supply. And it's an opportunity to move very quickly, because you can have every candidate evaluated in 24 to 48 hours and be the fastest company to make an offer, as opposed to scheduling interview after interview after phone screen after phone screen, taking 6 weeks. And by then they've had 5 job offers and they're gone.
Yeah, it's certainly a game of speed, recruitment for sure. So what are some of the great kind of overlap stories that you've seen and that you see regularly? So say, for example, you know, I've heard of startups looking for sales hires with hospitality background, because they're used to dealing with people, making people smile, making people feel welcome, building rapport. What are some roles that you've been seeing with Vervo and with your experience that have that really nice overlap that you wouldn't assume, you know, X came from, you know, Y?
Seek hired a florist into an executive administrator role using our platform. Australia Post used our platform to bring people into a tech academy with no tech background to teach people how to code. You know, we see this all day. The most common feedback we get is, I just hired someone I normally would have screened out. And I mean, it's extraordinary what people are capable of if you just give them an opportunity, right? And so when companies focus on the ability to do the job and the potential to learn how to do that job, amazing things can happen. I mean, we're helping Colorado Coalition for the Homeless redefine all their case managers so they can deliver better services to people suffering from homelessness and other related issues. You know, we're doing, I mean, we've done, we've tested literally tens of thousands since the start of the pandemic of people in healthcare And 2/3 of those are for clinical roles. So personal carers in aged care, registered nurses, mental health counsellors. And I mean, if you think about the people that in those roles and the backgrounds that they could come from, and so we're seeing people from teaching backgrounds go into marketing roles. We're seeing so many of these things happen, and this becomes possible when you remove the traditional barriers and you think about how does someone get an opportunity to put their best foot forward so they can do great work and focus on the job and the company and not all this other noise of like, how many years did you work at this place and where did you study? I mean, some of the jobs that exist today, there's no education path. I mean, let's talk about crypto, okay? I mean, sorry, where are they teaching that? Is that being taught at university? Who are all these people? Where did they learn all this stuff?
Yeah, where are their qualifications?
Before that, it was SEO and whatever, Facebook ads. Like, where do they teach that? I mean, now they probably teach that 10 years later. And so these people are self-taught. And so, we see all these stories all the time where people say some companies requiring 10 years experience in something that was invented 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you sort of remove all that and you just think about, let's give someone an opportunity to perform and show us what they can do, you are going to bring terrific people into your company, people who will surprise you.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. That's awesome. So, Omer, so you're CEO, founder and CEO at Vervo. How do you think about leadership? What do you do day to day to make sure that you're doing what you need for your troops, and so that you can, drive the mission, vision, strategy, so forth forward?
I try and think about how can I be most impactful for our business, and I try and limit. And there's usually like 50 things that I want to do, but only 3 of them or 4 of them at most are probably going to really move the dial. And so I try and those things are really, the first is people, so hiring and managing people. The second is evangelizing the company's mission and story and talking to our biggest customers and being present in the market. And the third is capital and investors and managing the company's money and making sure that we can fund our growth and allocating capital to the right things. And allocating capital is a way of signaling to people what's important to the company, where we want to invest, what we care about, what we're prioritizing. And I try and not do anything else. And I also try to understand what are the things that I could do that would have a negative impact, and I try and not do those. So, for example, as we grow and we have a leadership team in the company, a layer of leaders, I want to give them space. I want to give other people space to make mistakes so that they learn. I don't want to always give people the answer. So I also have to reinvent myself and learn that there's something that maybe I did personally 6 months ago. Now I'm not going to do that and I'm going to give it to someone else, but I can't tell them how to do it down to the millimeter, because then that's taking away their opportunity to have space to do that and learn and develop. And so if I stick to those core things that I think can be impactful to the company, and then create space for others to do things that they're good at, and identify what's missing, what are the gaps, and recruit into those areas, then hopefully I can be as additive as possible to the company. So that's how I think about allocating myself. And in terms of broader leadership, I try and continue to reinforce to people why we exist. So I do it every week. I write a note to the whole company and I remind people why we're here, what's important, the impact of our work, the impact that we're having on candidates, on customers. And I also articulate a number of messages, communicate a number of messages that I think are important right now for people to focus on. And then I leave it up to them and to other leaders in the company to reinforce that.
So, Omer, are you at Vervo currently running a remote first model, hybrid model, on-site model? How are you looking at that, and what does the future look like in terms of how you build the team, where you resource it, and how you continue to have a good culture?
Globally distributed and remote first. So we're on 3 continents: Europe, the US, and Australia. We have people in multiple cities in each of those continents. Everybody works from home. We're not against offices. So the engineering team, I think, really wants to be co-located, and so we'll probably facilitate that at some stage. We're certainly not going to force anyone to go into the office. Large part of our team prefers to work remotely, and even if we make an office available, people will still have maximum flexibility to choose how they work and where they work from. Because we're working across all 3 time zones, we have people taking calls at 6 and 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. and whatever. And so they can also go to the gym at 2 p.m. and go for a bike ride at 10 a.m. and they do all those things. And I have zero interest in being like a FaceTime person or a kindergarten teacher. I'm interested in outcomes, and I'm interested in trust. And so we try and hire people who can work or want to work autonomously and value independence and don't need a really prescriptive, people who respond well to a management structure management style, I should say, that's not overly prescriptive and prefer. Some people drown in autonomy. They need to be told every minute, what to do. And people like that are probably not going to do well in an environment like ours. And so what that does is it gives us the ability to hire people in different locations. And now it's challenging because, it's easy to get everyone together on a Friday afternoon and have a beer, or on a Friday morning and have a pizza or whatever. And when you've got people in like Florida and Arizona and Texas and Melbourne and Sydney and so on, not as easy to do that. And when you're working from home, there are all sorts of interruptions, and also the fleeting interactions where you can just pop by someone's desk doesn't exist. So you have to think very differently about how do you communicate, how do you manage relationships, what's Slack, what's email, what's document, what's phone call, what's Zoom. And often we get that wrong, and people have a meeting for something that should be a message, or they send a message for something that's clearly sensitive that should be a meeting, me included, right? So I don't think it's like this natural thing where we magically work in this way and everyone knows how to do it. I think we have to be taught how to work in this sort of asynchronous, remote fashion. But that's our company. That's how we do it. And I think overwhelmingly it's been successful and people love it. And when we're in hiring conversations and people say that they really want to work in an office, we say, well, maybe you're not the right. That's not going to be. We might have one, but that's not really something you should expect in this company, that everyone will be in the office. If that's something you care about deeply, plenty of other
opportunities. Yeah, for sure. I think ourselves very similar, trying to still figure out asynchronous work, fully remote, distributed teams, and so forth. And it's a continuous work in progress. One thing I wanted to ask, so you mentioned trust and autonomy. I think that's key for culture, for sure. I really believe that. One thing that I'm just interested to know is, so culture is, I think, how you treat people, but there's also something to be said for vibe and energy in an organization. And obviously when you've got a good culture, there's going to be a decent vibe, but how do you foster Vervo being an enjoyable place to work, being fully remote. Do you have any kind of tips, tools, things that have worked, things that you're working on around that?
We've been talking about that quite a bit, and some people in our company are very passionate about that. And I'm probably not the best kind of chief happiness officer or whatever. And so I recognize that. I'm probably not going to organize the dress up party or that
we had a dress up party yesterday, actually.
Yeah,
organize it.
So,
genuine, just yesterday.
How did it go?
Yeah, pretty good. We had the release of our new brand and website, so we had a gala event. Everyone wore, top hats and bow ties and what have you. Shorts. But it was just shorts and a shirt. It was just it was a nice thing to do for the team, get everyone together, play some fun and games. The thing is, I think we executed on it really well. It was really nice, and everybody laughed and had fun and so forth. But it would have been better in person. It would have been. Everything is better in person. So it is an interesting one. At Athyna, we have 80% of our team in Latin America, probably in Buenos Aires, about 80% of our team. And today they were all at a co-work, having a great time, so on and so forth. How do we make sure that in the future there's as many opportunities for our team in Europe and our team in, Asia that have culture building in-person activities? It's a real balancing act and a real it's going to be a continuous conversation from now until forever. So
I'll tell you what we've done, recognizing that I'm not the best person to champion that. We did three things. One is we asked people what they care about, and the answers were surprising. So they care less about that and more about like having some more days off and not individual. It's not that they want more leave. They want the company. They feel guilty taking leave because they're letting their teammates down. So they wanted for the company to say, we're shutting the company down for a day here and there.
Interesting.
So that's an example. There are a bunch of other things that people raise. So we asked that question and then we responded to that and delivered into that. The second thing we did was I empowered people. I basically said, look, I'm not going to organize a dress-up party, but I'm very happy for you guys you don't need I'm giving you permission to go do all these things and run with it. And the third thing we did was we then funded that. So we said, right, we're going to allocate budget to all these things. So for example, there's a monthly budget for people to have lunch with each other at team lunch in whatever forum they want to do that, and the company's going to pay for it. And there's a bunch of other things. And so we've allocated budget, which really means it's not lip service. The company is serious about, the company's leadership is serious about doing it. Now, my hope is that this will sort of grow organically until such time as we're big enough where it becomes much more structured. But really it's up to people to do. And I know some teams have like games and they do all these things and other teams have no interest in that. And they just want to work and have a drink and that's it. So people have different preferences, and that's why I'm always reluctant to enforce company-wide whatever, especially when you've got people on 3 continents, different cultures, different preferences, engineering, sales, all this stuff. And not everyone wants to do the dress up thing. Many people don't. I personally would rather pluck my eyes out, but I'm very happy for other people to do it. I'm very happy for other people to do it.
Chief Unhappiness Officer over here, Omer Molad. Wallo, I've actually got a question for you. So Wallo is part of our party planning committee. We have a party planning committee of 3. It's only a small committee, but just people. We gave it to the people, like you said, Omer, a little bit. How have you found it, Wallo, trying to plan with Sophia and Josie and Diane at a stage, how to engage the team and fun things to try? Like, how's it been from your experience?
Usually for us, most of the time we just try to schedule in some time in the week because we're all like swamped, have a couple of things to do. But then when we find some time, we sit down, get some ideas out on what we can do to just make the team feel more cohesive, feel more together. And Sophia and Josie, they have like the best ideas. I tend to not, I'm probably the unhappiness officer there, but like they have such great ideas. Yeah. And I'm just like, wow, you guys are so fun. And I thought I was fun, but these guys are real fun. And then they have ideas, and then we work on them and yeah, we plan for them. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been yeah, it's something I'm actually very happy to be a part of because it's like how do we, yeah, like you explained, the whole remote space, we have to look at screens all the time. If we get to laugh, and feel some dopamine and oxytocin, all of those, yeah, it would help. Like yesterday's gala, we laughed a lot, and the team feels a bit more together than they were maybe 24 hours before that. And then the co-working space, yeah. So those little percent increments, that's what we're always looking for, those tiny changes, yeah, to build up the
vibe. The
vibe. The vibe.
Yeah. No, it is. It's. I think it's going to continue for everybody to be a real top of mind thing. Omer, I have one final question from my end. Then I'm going to throw it over to Wallet to kind of wrap us up with a few rapid fire questions. And I'm gonna mold two questions into one here because there was one kind of area that we probably could talk about for 30 minutes, but and that's kind of product development and so forth, and how you go about building world-class product. But what does Vervo look like in 5 or 10 years, or 3 years if you don't if 10 years is too far? What does the future of Vervo look like? And how do you get there through product development? Like how do you look at making sure that you can hit those milestones and build out an amazing product roadmap?
So the vision is for our way of hiring to become mainstream. So we want skills-based hiring to become the normal way to hire, and for anyone asking for resumes and cover letters, for that to be kind of some obscure, like people using dial-up, modem. Most people don't even know what that is today. That's where we want to get to in hiring. We've got a lot of work to do. When we get to that point, you can reverse engineer and look at, well, what's our company going to look like, right? It will be huge. We'll be a very valuable company, and all these other, you can talk about a lot of other metrics, but we will have won. Okay, whatever that's what winning looks like. Not some revenue number, not the competition. Okay, not some employee number, not the amount of capital raised. So that's what we're working towards. Now, how do we get there? We get there by being the best at telling our story and evangelizing this way of doing things. And we get there by delivering a great experience for companies and candidates, an experience that continues to strive towards being as close as possible to simulating the job. And that's really the key. And all the rest is just execution. And that's not, to be dismissive of that. The execution is everything. But, that we're very clear on where we want to get to and how to get there. And now it's just a race of, how quickly can we do it? How well can we do it? How can we use every dollar in the most effective way? And customers will eventually tell us if we're doing a good job.
Great. Sounds amazing. Creating more opportunities for more people worldwide. Really, I like the sound of it. So over to you, Wallo. You can hit us with some rapid fire.
Okay. So Omer, what is a really awesome book you've read lately or recently?
I read a book called The End of Average recently, which is about why using averages for anything is wrong. And there is no average. There is no average height. There's no average seat size. And really everything should be individualized. Everything should be tailored. And I think that's an interesting. But there are so many wonderful books. Atomic Habits. There's a book. That's a great book. The Hard Thing About Hard Things. There's also a book about generalists and specialists. It's called Range: How Generalists Thrive in a Specialized World. Something like that. Maybe I got it slightly wrong, the title, but David Epstein, and that's really the book that it's had a massive effect on me, because it really showed me that it taught me that analogous thinking is very powerful to sort of learn in one setting or one industry, and then use that in a completely different area that's seemingly related, like to go from being a doctor to a dancer. You're more likely to end up being more successful because you've got these other experiences to draw on. So I mean, I can go on, but there's some examples.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. Yeah, I could also ask so many questions, but we're trying to round up. So what's one tool that you can't live without?
A tool?
Or anything? Yeah.
Probably Slack. I hate to say it. I don't particularly like it, but it's the least worst way for us to communicate rapidly and send short messages.
Yeah. Slack will be so happy to hear that.
And that's the worst testimonial from a customer of all time. It's the least worst way to.
It's the first thing that I check in the morning, and so I'd say Slack. If you took that away, I'd struggle.
Yeah. Awesome. So, do you have any advice for entrepreneurs, out there trying to make their ideas mainstream,
Yeah, keep going. Don't give up and don't take shit from anyone.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, the world doesn't owe you anything. No one's going to give you any, do you any favors. No one owes you anything. Everyone's going to say no. Everyone hates you. People are jealous. Everyone thinks they know what it's like.
This is the unhappiness officer talking again.
Everyone's cool. But if you feel compelled, you must do it. And the reward is huge because you're creating something. So keep going. That's my advice. I don't have any knowledge to impart other than just encourage. I can just give encouragement.
Nah, you imparted a lot in the whole episode, man. It's been awesome. Let me throw back to Doc to finish.
Yeah, good stuff. Cheers, Wallo. Look, Omer, that's pretty much it from us. Where can people find out more about you, more about Vervo, anything else that you're up to or anything you want to plug? Now's the time.
Yeah, I think the starting point's the website, vervo.com, vervoe.com, and me personally on LinkedIn. And we're pretty easy to find and easy to connect with. So is the team, pretty visible. So that's what I'd say. And I also want to say that, I wouldn't want people coming away thinking that I'm the Grinch. I'm very happy on the inside.
Of course.
I just don't, dress up parties that I express.
I can relate to that. Actually, I get surprised when people call me like very happy at Athyna because I think I'm the Grinch, but then they're like, "You're so excited." I'm like, "Wow, okay."
And I'm very passionate about a lot of things, and I enjoy talking to people about them. But I'm not necessarily like the Christmas party is not necessarily my scene. But I'll have a 6-hour conversation with someone about something intellectual and whatever. We express ourselves differently. So for people that want to do the games and that stuff, I'll leave that to other people. And I get my stimulation and happiness from other things.
Your passion shines through, mate, to be fair. And, not everyone's... Wallo's... We call Wallo our hype guy, not everyone's the hype guy. You're obviously super passionate, and it's been great talking to you. So sorry for calling you the unhappiness officer.
No, it was fair, but I wanted to get the real story out.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure everything that you say in terms of your vision in the future and execution, it's just a matter of execution now. From what I can tell, you've executed exceptionally well. You're a passionate guy doing good things. So we're Team Vervo, allies all the way. We'll be cheering you on. So thanks a lot for coming on the show, Omer. And from our side, that's a wrap.
Thanks so much.